I like how our profile pictures both, we have faces that just can't exist in real life.
Well, that's how it is in real life too.
What, faces that can't exist?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We
And
have
you know what?
non-existent faces.
Non-existent faces.
Yeah.
This is all a matrix for sure.
Matrix face. Matrix.
Matrix face. There we go. Oh man.
All right. Geez. Okay. Well, I guess we've started the podcast.
Yeah, we've started the podcast. Oh, that's beautiful, Eric. So yeah, I'm speaking of Eric.
Yes.
I'm Dan.
Yeah, and I'm Erik.
And yeah, and he's Erik, and
Yeah.
we are the Accelerativ Thrust, and this is the podcast.
Here it is.
Well, it's not the pod. It's
this
you
is
guys
an
know what
episode
this is.
of the podcast.
This is an episode of the pod. Exactly. Hey, Limp Bizkit canceled their tour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Just couldn't get it up, huh?
It was just too limp out there. Even the medication was not working.
Why did they do that?
Well, actually, it was for a legit reason. It was over concerns of COVID. I guess that their guitar player, Wes Borland, may have contracted COVID. Maybe they know by now.
So wait, you're saying Wes Borland didn't have a mask on?
I
don't think that happens, does it?
Yeah, no, never. That's crazy. I never thought of it that way.
But yeah, that's interesting.
It is.
I'm sure ticket sales are just through the roof, and they were like, God, I can't believe we have to cancel this tour. We sold out almost every show.
We really wanted to see Fred Durst look like a dad.
I was thinking about that. I finally looked at the pictures.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's like the Beastie Boys did the same thing like 30 years ago, and everyone's like, oh, they're fucking great, the Beastie Boys. And then Fred Durst does, and they're like, what a dork. Like,
I'm not convinced. I'm actually not convinced that anyone actually cared. Yeah. I think that the people who were typing the articles just did that, like just made it seem like everyone cared.
I see. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think. I mean, because you're exactly right. Not only did the Beastie Boys already do that kind of stuff back in the 90s, Fred Durst already did that stuff back in the 90s. Like, seriously, on the Family Values tour, and even in the Wes Borland did it too. I mean, in the Faith video, the video to Faith, their cover of the George Michael song, he's dressed up like he's got a mustache. I mean, Wes Borland. Yeah, why is it so weird that Fred Durst would do something like that when he's in a band with Wes Borland?
Yeah, right. You can't have two weirdos in this band.
Yeah, exactly. Just can't.
No band's ever had two or more weirdos in it.
I do got to give credit where credit's due, though. I do think that Fred Durst rocks that look pretty well, actually.
Oh, the one in the windbreaker and the gray hair. I think it looks good. He looks like Owen Wilson and Royal Tenenbaums, sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe
some kind of Matthew McConaughey, something. I don't know.
Actually, I think Matthew McConaughey might be even more appropriate to describe. I think he looks like Owen Wilson in anything, really.
Yeah. Owen Wilson. One of those guys we've mentioned. I'd be more apt to get into a band that had that guy as the lead singer than what we know Fred Durst looking like. You
mean the red hat?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like, I mean, maybe I'm a little Janko-ish for this podcast, but I kind of like the red hat, sort of. I think it's kind of an iconic symbol of my 1998 existence.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's sort of, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, for me anyway, that's the Fred Durst that I grew up. I'm very protective of the Fred Durst that I grew up with, but that's the one that's the Fred Durst I know.
I don't want this old fangled Fred Durst.
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah,
give me the new metal Fred Durst.
Yes, the new metal Fred Durst. The one
he
that
puts
likes
the new and new metal.
Well, it just seems
old.
Seems more interesting to break stuff,
Yeah. Besides your hip.
Yeah. Which is what he would probably be doing in this getup.
Yeah.
People with red hats on backwards don't break hips. Come on. They break stuff. No, yeah, they break stuff.
They break other people's hips.
Exactly. I mean, there's a difference between stuff and hips. But you know what? That would actually be really cool if they rebranded that song as Break Hips. It would be so like.
Is that the song where they talk about the motherfucking chainsaw? Is that the song?
Yeah, I'll skin your ass raw.
I've never heard the real song, I don't think, but there's like this Seinfeld remix. I mean, it's been on the internet for like 20 years, but every time I hear it, it's so funny. I can't get over it.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but anything.
Oh, snap. It's good.
Anything that involves Seinfeld I'm automatically a fan usually. I mean, like it's so much better than something like Friends or.
Yeah, I've never really seen Friends. I've heard people say they like it. Yeah.
It's not terrible, but it's a lot, the people who really hate it.
Yeah, I didn't like a lot of things when I was younger. Like anytime a show had like people who had friends, I mean, so obviously Friends, but people who had friends and or money or whatever, like I just couldn't deal because I was just like broke and friendless. I felt like, and it was like, well, I'm not going to sit around watching popular people's problems. Like, I don't give a shit, like 90210 and stuff. No way. No thanks.
But there is one thing interesting about 90210 is that they actually reference Twin Peaks and David Lynch quite a bit in that show.
Really?
Yeah. It's so bizarre. I remember because my sister used to love that show.
Yeah.
And okay, this is going to maybe lose me some friends saying this, but I went through a phase like after like a couple years ago. I'll just leave it at this. I went through a pretty dark period of my life. And I found myself watching reruns of Beverly Hills 90210 almost every day for about 2 weeks. I don't know why this happened.
Did it help? Did it help you out?
In a weird sort of way. I guess
that happens.
Like
absolutely,
it's so weird. Like I have no explanation why I gravitated towards that.
Yeah.
But there was an episode where Shannon Doherty and I can't even remember the name. Well, there was Luke Perry, but he was like kind of the, like he was sort of like the popular, hunk, or whatever that was hardly ever around, The storyline, of course, focused a lot on Shannon Doherty's character. I can't even think of her right now, but her name, the character's name. But anyway, okay. They were having a conversation and somehow like David Lynch and Twin Peaks like came up and like they referenced that. There was an episode where they were messing with an Ouija board. There was actually some like kind of dark things in that show that I think.
All right. Well, I guess I'll give it a chance. Okay. I'm going to watch the entire thing tonight.
Whoa, well, okay.
I'm going to binge it.
Go right ahead. But I am going to caution. I am not recommending anybody does what I did and watch it daily for 2 weeks. It was weird. It was a weird thing. I have no explanation for it. I can't defend it.
It happens.
But I'm also not going to. I'm proud of it. I'm going to be proud that I watched Beverly Hills 90210 rewind.
Sometimes you just need what you need,
Yeah. I don't know. It was weird. Yeah. There was sort of this weird comfort level.
Yeah.
That, okay, I'm watching this show about people who have it infinitely easier than I do right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe there was a little bit of drive in me after watching it. Like, okay, there's like one guy who was in a band and he got a record deal. I'm like, I'm going to go get a record deal now.
There you go.
I mean, that it didn't happen, but
yeah. Well, I mean, but you were inspired. So that's good.
I was inspired. I mean, his music sounded like the Seinfeld theme song.
Oh, so no wonder he got signed.
Yeah. I mean, back then that was what was going on.
Everyone was playing slap bass on their keyboard.
Yeah. Was that what that was? Was slap bass on the keyboard?
Yeah. It was all played on the keyboard.
Cool.
Yeah.
It works for me, man.
I had a dark period where I got way into 99.9 Fahrenheit degrees by Suzanne Vega.
Oh yeah.
And no joke, it's the only album I listened to for my entire senior year of high school. I was depressed. Yeah.
I don't believe that.
180 days. That's all I listened to.
What? Well, you didn't listen to anything else. Like, are you serious?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe if I was in the car with other people, but at home, that's the only record I could listen to. And it was amazing. Again, it was sort of that, I don't know, like being depressed. If something makes you feel good on any level, you just kind of keep doing it, even if it's illogical.
Yeah, and even if it's like something that seems uncool, like seems horribly uncool for a 38-year-old. I was 38 at the time. Long time ago. I mean, that was way back in the day.
Yeah.
2 years ago, pre-COVID. Anything pre-COVID is way back in the day now.
Yeah.
It seems really uncool for a 38-year-old to be watching Beverly Hills 90210 at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it was like back-to-back episodes for like 3 hours too. So, wow. And I was getting into the characters too. I was like, oh, okay. Like I felt like it was like 1991 and like, okay, what's Rachel gonna do this time? I started like actually like talking about the characters like I knew them.
Yeah.
It was insane. For 2 weeks.
You must have needed them and they helped. So
yeah,
good on them.
I mean, if any of them are listening, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
No. Shannon, Brendan. Yeah. Brendan. Yeah. It's weird what you gravitate towards during dark periods.
Yeah.
It's stuff that you don't expect. I would have expected to be listening to black metal or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, actually I listen to black metal when I'm happy. I mean, it's as hot as that sounds. It's like, oh, today's a great sunny day. I'm going to throw on some Dark Throne.
Yeah. Right. I just realized that, Leland Palmer was on 90210.
You mean the character?
The actor, Ray Weiss.
Or not the character. Yeah, the actor. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Laura Palmer's dad.
Yeah. Laura Palmer's dad. Okay, gotcha. All right. I might have said Leland Palmer. Yeah. Okay. The
incestuous murdering rapist dad.
And ended up kind of being Bob, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a cop out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, that guy didn't really do that terrible shit to his daughter.
No, yeah.
It was just the pure evil came out of an atom bomb. Oh, wait, spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, spoiler alert, everybody. If you haven't seen Twin Peaks.
If you haven't seen Twin Peaks, don't listen to this show. That's all we're going to talk about. We pretend this is a music podcast. No, this is about Twin Peaks.
It's really a lot of other shit in disguise.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's really what it is. But
let's pretend to review some music.
Yeah, let's do that. Like this is going to be a fun pretend.
Yeah. The first one I'll bring up is an EP. We have a couple of EPs today. So yes. I don't think that's going to make the episode any shorter because we are full of shit regardless of what we're reviewing. So, but yeah, this one is by the group or band Place to Bury Strangers. It's called the Hologram EP. It just came out and it's pretty good. I like A Place to Bury Strangers. Joe from a band I play in called Peanut Ricky showed them to me and I really liked it. And so I assumed I was going to like this and I did. But I will say I felt like it was pretty different than what I've heard before from A Place to Bury Strangers. I would say the older stuff that I've heard, it was a little darker feeling to me. It was almost like neo-goth, like She Wants Revenge or Oh Children, which we reviewed on here. Just like really gothy. It was really shoegazy and stuff too, really Cure-ish with all the guitars and things like that. And it had elements that continue over into this EP. But I felt like this was a little, I don't want to say poppier because these are not pop songs by any means, but slightly less dark, maybe a little more upbeat. I don't know how to say that, but it's still very spacey, shoegazy, really no wave kind of sounds, especially with the percussion, which sometimes feels like real percussion, sometimes feels like drum machine. It's just kind of noisy dream pop stuff, which is amazing, which is super good. And I sort of like that it changed a little bit, because the other stuff I've heard, and especially Pinned, the record before this, it almost felt like maybe they had sort of reached a sort of pinnacle with that kind of stuff. And I think they did need to explore a little bit more to find some new interesting avenues to take their music. But yeah, I would say that it still has that dark element to it. Don't get me wrong. But this is a little closer to maybe like Johnny Jewel type stuff. So like the chromatics and things like that. But also like the first Jesus and Mary Chain record, maybe something like Suicide at times, or Spaceman 3, just stuff like that. So still all the same elements from the previous releases, but maybe just a little less dark and a little, just a little bit more fun. So I don't know. I think someone might put this on and be like, I can't believe that idiot said this is fun. But comparatively, it's much less dark than the older stuff. It is only about 22 minutes. It's an EP, but the record that came before this was only like 33 minutes. So I figured, what the hell? It's like 2 songs less maybe. So I really enjoyed it though. And if you like that kind of stuff, if you like dark, spacey, shoegaze, dream pop, I definitely think you would like this. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I really like this a lot. Let me preface this by saying I fucking love the first 2 Place to Bury Strangers albums. I've liked this band for quite a while, and I have to agree with you that it definitely is kind of toned down, at least in the noisy sort of department of especially the really raw production of like the first album in particular. I noticed that right away. It didn't really surprise me though, because the full length that they put out before this EP kind of was heading in this direction as well. A little bit more, I would say, yeah, like you said, Eric, not really poppy, but poppier, or at least it would probably be a lot easier to, like, somebody who is not really into like noisy production and like strange sounds. It would be easier to introduce them with this EP as opposed to the self-titled, but yeah, definitely dark new wave. I would recommend this if you like anything by My Bloody Valentine, Sonic Youth, New Order, The Cure. Yeah, very shoegazy. I also want to say that some of the like drum machine, I like the fact that I couldn't really tell at times if it was a drum machine or if it was live drums. But in any event, the drums kind of reminded me in a weird way of Big Black a little bit, like in some cases. And then the last song, the melody of it, and I don't know, you might disagree with me here, Eric, totally reminded me of the song The Promise by When in Rome.
Oh, I don't know that song.
You don't know that song?
No.
I promise you, I promise you. You don't know that song?
Oh, yeah, maybe I do. I didn't know who.
Have you seen the movie? Have you seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
It's the song that plays during the credits.
Okay.
And I got to say, I love that song. I've always loved that song. As a result, I love that last track on this album, because it totally reminds me of that song in a weird sort of way. It doesn't really sound like it, but the melody is very similar. Yeah, I thought this was yet another great addition to A Place to Bury Strangers. I think it needs to be mentioned that there is a wonderful documentary called, what is it? Goodnight Brooklyn, I think. I think that's what it is. Talks about the main dude from A Place to Bury Strangers, and forgive me, I forgot his name. Do you know his name, Eric?
No, I don't.
He and it might have even been the whole band, like, lived in this apartment building in downtown Brooklyn, and they ran a venue out of it. And it became a pretty big venue for like the indie scene. Then it ended up getting, the building actually got bought out by Vice. And so they ended up kind of getting evicted because of Vice. It also talks about how this band actually, they make their own pedals and stuff like that.
Really?
And so they actually had to have a company, and I think it still operates today. The company still does. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wow.
But they were actually selling their own pedals. Yeah, dude.
I'll have to check into that. Yeah, that sounds cool.
This. I think it's called Good Night Brooklyn. But it's a very, very, very cool documentary. That's actually my introduction to this band.
Cool.
And yeah, great documentary. You should definitely check it out. Anybody who's listening that hasn't seen it, I recommend it 100%. But yes, so nice. A lot of the weird sounds, especially on those early records, came from their own pedals.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to talk about is this record called Humbug by this group called the Arctic Monkeys. Now, the Arctic Monkeys are from England, and they had quite a bit of hype around the early 2000s. They kind of fell into the whole, garage rock revival sort of thing a little bit, though I think that they were completely different than that. But they seem to acquire success around the same time that bands like the White Stripes and the Hives and the Strokes and stuff like that kind of came to fruition. This is their third album, which came out in 2009. So it's kind of an older record, but also kind of a newer record. I was a big fan of their first two albums. So I kind of held off on listening to this one for a while, but then I found out that it's actually was co-produced by Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age.
Oh shit. Okay.
Which I was just like, that makes so much sense when you actually listen to the production on this record. Because one of the things that I really like about this record is the production. It's got a very kind of almost stoner rockish about it, but not really. It's got kind of a psychedelic vibe. And it sounds like a journey through like the desert or something. So, and Josh Homme, I mean, Queens of the Stone Age, that's their whole like persona is like the desert, and so it kind of makes sense when you listen to this record. I think the guitar work on this record is some of the best that I've heard from anybody, honestly. I love the tones they're getting. There's a little bit of twang involved. It's just a really interesting record. Some of the lyrics maybe get a little silly, but I sort of think that that's also the point. The Arctic Monkeys, for anyone who's been familiar with them, I mean, that's kind of what their thing has always been, honestly. I mean, their first single that got them recognized was called I Bet That You Look Good on the Dance Floor. And I would say that the earlier Arctic Monkeys, and I don't know how familiar you are with this band, Erik, was definitely way more garage rockish than this album in particular. And from what I can hear, this is kind of a standalone album for them. It doesn't quite sound like anything else they've done. And from what because they've put out a few records after this, I think that they kind of maybe went in more of a commercial direction after, more commercial. Because I mean, this is a pretty accessible album. It's not like it's crazy experimental or anything. I mean, the songs are very catchy and very easy to get into. There's nothing that's like really, none of the songs are particularly long. They're pretty much stay within the range of like 2 to 4 minute songs. But I really like the feeling. There's a certain feeling about this record that I really enjoy. I think it's put together very well. I think that the sequence of the songs is done well. I think, it sounds like a record that they put a lot of thought into. Or maybe they didn't put it's either they put a lot of thought into it or they put hardly any thought into it, and it just turned out this way. I'm not sure which one it is. But in any case, I think it's just a very cool rock record. Some of it reminds me of like something you'd hear maybe from, I mean, some of it reminds me of the Beatles, if maybe the Beatles had distortion pedals. Some of it reminds me of even some stuff like Rocky Erickson, you know, or something like that. I hear elements of Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, I think that can't be denied. I even hear, you know, some stuff like, you know, 90s alternative rock type stuff. Like I mentioned Folk Implosion on this show before. I can hear some stuff kind of coming around like that, you know, Dinosaur Jr. a little bit, but overall it's totally their thing. And I really, really enjoy this record. What did you think, Erik?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I've never heard the Arctic Monkeys before, unless they have some big ass hit that I could not have ignored. But even if that's the case, I don't know that band is the Arctic Monkeys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I was really surprised, and it's hilarious that Josh Homme produced this because my notes say somewhere between Queens of the Stone Age and Black Heart Procession.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that Queens of the Stone Age big time.
Yeah.
So that's cool because I had no idea. And so with that being said, this was way more rocking than I anticipated. Like,
oh, yeah.
What I thought the Arctic Monkeys sounded like, this isn't it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it started and I was like, oh shit, this is rock music with guitar solos, and like it was rock music. So it was, like I said, it was a lot more rocking and stuff than I anticipated. It was also more theatrical, you know. It was like more almost like vaudevillian. It had really great songs, really great playing, and actually besides Queen of the Stone Age and sort of the mood and some of the movement of Black Heart Procession, the thing it reminded me the most of is Hot Hot Heat. And especially the makeup for the Breakdown record, which also is very theatrical and I think goes a lot of different places. But honestly, lyrically, you can tell that it's more about phonetics. You know, it's like how words sound more than what they mean. And that's okay. Definitely a lot like Hot Hot Heat and the Strokes, you know, that kind of stuff, of course. But I also heard a little bit of Brit pop kind of stuff too, you know, Stone Roses and Blur and that kind of stuff.
Ooh, that's the stuff that describes it perfectly. Yeah.
And so, but that Queens of the Stone Age comparison can't, like you said, can't be denied.
No.
But yeah, I would say if you like Hot Hot Heat and Black Heart Procession and Queens of the Stone Age, first of all, you're a fucking weirdo like me, but I think you'd really like this. And people probably who like some of that stuff have probably stayed away from this because it's very popular. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I don't purposely not listen to bands just because they're popular, but I don't generally seek them out either, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
same here.
And so I ended up really enjoying it, like a lot. I never really got into, I did get into the Strokes and Hot Hot Heat, but there were a lot of bands of that time that were sort of similar, you know, and I sort of didn't get into all of them. And so if someone said to me like, oh, Arctic Monkeys, they sound like the Libertines or something, I'd be like, oh, no, thanks on either of them. But it actually, it's super good. I'm glad you picked it. And I'm sure I'll check out more of their stuff now, knowing that it's pretty good stuff. So yeah,
I'm glad you liked it, Erik. And I actually kind of figured you would. Just, you know, based on kind of some of the stuff you have recommended. It's definitely, and I totally see what you're saying about the Arctic Monkeys and how they were there was a lot, like I said, there was a lot of hype around them for a while. Yeah. And so sort of seemed, but I would actually recommend, if you like this, I would recommend going back and listening to their first two albums too.
I will.
Like both of them are really, really good.
All right. So my second pick is a release by a project called Barad, or maybe Barad. It's Barad. RAD. And the recording is called No Plants, Just Mansions. And this just came out. It's only really on Bandcamp. You can order it on cassette. I did, and it was awesome. And it is awesome. So anyway, how I heard of this was I used to be in a band called Los Voltage, and we played in Kansas City with a band called Meat Mist. And that had a person in it named Dan Ohm, who is a really nice person. I only met him maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, but really cool. Anyway, a little ways down the road, him and Carrie Thomas had a band called Phantom Head, and they came to Iowa City. So I checked them out, and I met Carrie, and I don't know, we sort of hit it off, got along. And so I've sort of paid attention to what she's done since then. And so this recording has Carrie Thomas and a person named Alex Liebman. So yeah, it's just the two of them. And I don't know which of them does what. There's a lot going on here. I hear bass, guitar, programming, percussion, a lot of saxophone, and I don't know who's doing what. It's not really listed. But so yeah, Carrie Thomas has been in a few different things that I know. Phantom Head, Burial Teens, Night Shading, I think, is her solo project. Anyway, they call this acid library music, is one of the kind of descriptions on the Bandcamp site. And I can see that, but I also think it feels a little more exciting than that. You know, acid library music to me kind of sounds like really mellow, and I don't think that this is that. I think this is really has a lot going on. It's really intriguing, and definitely not, I mean, it might be relaxing in its own way, but I don't think it's purely mellow like that. But yeah, it also has this pensive side to it. It's a little bit, it has a heaviness to it. And I don't mean that musically. I mean like the sense, the feeling that it has. It's a little tense, you know, it has some tension to it. Yeah, it has a lot of saxophone, and I think it's really cool saxophone. It reminded me of, you know, like David Lynch kind of saxophone and mood and at times and stuff. But I think that he kind of takes that from more like film noir soundtracks, you know, from the 50s, things like that, 40s, 50s. And so even though I'm saying Lynchian, I think I'm really talking about this sort of like Naked City sort of gangstery film noir kind of feel. And I think there's a lot of really cool percussion elements to this too. Like I said, a lot of it sounds like programming. A lot of it sounds like real drums, or a combination of the two. It's droney at times. It's has a lot of electronic sort of atmosphere to it, but by no means is this like an ambient record in my mind. I think it moves and it changes continuously, you know, the whole time. To me, it's sort of like walking through a city at night. I know that sounds stupid, but like maybe just after it rained, you know, and there's just neon lights everywhere and it's like dark and dirty. And I don't know, it just set a really nice mood and it was a lot of fun. Things that it reminded me of were, and these are album specific because I don't want people to say, oh, it sounds like this band, because I don't think it does, or this composer or whatever. But things that it brought to mind for me were kind of like the record Night Flights by the Walker Brothers, the record United States of Islam by Muslim Gauze, the Twin Peaks score in general, but especially sort of they released a season 2 Twin Peaks record that had all of the, not just main themes, but all the incidental music too. And also it had a feeling of, I don't know if you've ever listened, Dan, to the Taxi Driver soundtrack by Bernard Herrmann or score.
No, but I'm pretty familiar with that score though.
Yeah,
a little bit, just because I've seen the movie.
You know? Right. Yep. So, and that feeling and some of the sounds came to mind too. But yeah, I would find it nearly impossible to put this into a style of music because it changes so much and explores so much. But as far as an atmosphere, it really has a nice, cool city kind of dark, Naked City kind of feel to it. And I don't mean the band Naked City. And I just, I really enjoyed it. So what do you think of it, Dan?
Well, the first thing that I wrote down, and I left this description for quite some time in my notes before I could add anything else, was this might be the most unlike anything else I've ever heard thing that I've ever heard.
Nice.
And it seriously, it defies description. Like it totally does set a mood. And I think that's fucking incredible because there's not very much music that I can say that about. That it's like, I mean, I struggled comparing this to anything. And I love that. I love the challenge of that because I compare things, you know what I mean? It's just the easiest way for me to communicate. Like, okay, if you like this, you're probably going to like this. You know what I mean? And this, like you said, the acid library music, that's a really, really fitting description. But I also agree with you that I just think that this record is almost a little too hyper for that. It's in the best ways possible. The song Church was the one that really blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's like acid gospel music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so good. Yeah. I mean, there's elements of almost everything here. Indie, dream pop. There's even some like funk and soul, like weird R&B stuff kind of going on.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, gospel, even like some almost like drum and bass type stuff, like kind of intertwined with the whole like ambience of it all. But yeah, it's not an ambient record either. It's not. And yeah, some of it's kind of drony, but it doesn't feel drony. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard to narrow down exactly what this is. And that's so good. It's honestly one of the most interesting instrumental releases that I've ever heard this year or just any year. Really fantastic. I love the name No Plants, Just Mansions. There's something about that I think is, I don't know what their intent was, but to me, it sounds like a very kind of satirical take on human civilization as we know it today. And I could be completely wrong about that. That's my interpretation though.
Yeah.
No plants, just mansions. Totally understand what you're saying about walking through the city at night on a, I don't even think after it rained. I think on a rainy night.
Yeah, for sure.
On a Saturday night, you're going to get some pizza. Murder is going to be committed. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, it's got a very noir, like sort of like it almost sounds like the pages of like Frank Miller's Sin City, you know, audio version of that, or like the Max, Sam Keith's The Max. I don't know how familiar you are with those comics, but
not very. Yeah.
Okay. Both of them take place in a very dark city. Like it's almost like when you're reading those comics, it's like, do you guys ever wake up during the day?
Yeah.
Like, cause it seems like the characters are always walking through dark alleys and that like daylight just doesn't exist in these comics. It's fantastic. And well, maybe it's not fantastic, and probably would be horrifying if that were true. But this record was so enjoyable, but horrifying at the same time, in the best possible ways. It really, I mean, I've never tripped on acid, but I could only imagine that it kind of sounds like that. Again, this is all in a very good way.
Right. Yeah.
I would recommend, if you like the names that I can think of, that, I mean, Godspeed, if you like Godspeed, this is almost like a twisted take on Godspeed in some ways. Almost, but it's not. It doesn't really sound like Godspeed either. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know, I heard maybe a little bit, like the Twin Peaks David Lynch type stuff, hands down, 100%. Yeah. And again, Twin Peaks, very dark show, there's, that's more of like a dark town, but like, yeah, this sounds like a score to like something,
I agree.
Some like weird, like movie, like, yeah, good job, guys. Fantastic stuff. And unfortunately, it says that the cassette is sold out.
Oh, dang.
So I will have to just keep listening to this on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And I will. And I'll probably buy the digital version.
Nice.
Because I really want to support people who make art this intriguing. This is really good. So glad you picked this, Erik.
Sweet. Nice.
I hope that they don't get mad at the murder references that I made.
I don't think that'll probably be a problem. Yeah. Well, I can imagine someone getting a review for their record where someone says, you're in the city, you're going to get some pizza, and murder is going to occur. Like that. That's a good review.
But then there was also like, okay, let me also add to that point. There's moments where this record is very colorful sounding too.
For sure. There's
moments where
disco
it almost sounds like a hot air balloon ride at times on acid.
Yeah.
Maybe with murder occurring in the hot air balloon too. I don't know.
The murder acid is implied.
The murder acid hot air balloon escapade.
No, there are a lot of fun moments on it too.
Very much so.
Just like this moody sort of thing. I do think it's I don't know. I don't want to use lame words, but like ponderous. It seems like something to think to, Yeah. But it's not all just that sort of dark noir element. There's a lot of fun on here too. And especially
a lot of joy.
Yeah. A lot of especially with the percussion throughout. I think that adds a really fun element. So yeah.
There's one track, and I actually think it is the track called Miami that actually it sounds like they're playing Miami bass in a club for like a minute.
Yeah.
It's like really, it's so cool and so hilarious. But and I don't know if it's meant to be hilarious, but I find it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, nice. It's great. I can't say anything bad about this release. It's so
nice.
Good.
Nice.
Thank you, Erik. And thank you, Alex and Carrie. Now we're on to The Center Won't Hold by Sleater-Kinney, which also has a Carrie in the band. Carrie Brownstein. She really doesn't need any introduction at this point. Anybody who's watched IFC in the last, decade or something. I don't even remember when Portlandia came out. But, she's definitely become somewhat of an icon. And really, Sleater-Kinney have been an iconic sort of indie sort of punk band with some Riot Girl influences and things like that for quite some time. This record, now this is actually kind of the opposite of my other pick, Humbug, in terms of, is this my favorite release from Sleater-Kinney? No, it's not my favorite release from Sleater-Kinney, but I really like this album. It's kind of a controversial and divisive record, I've come to find out from their fan base. And most of that is because their former drummer, Janet Weiss, departed from the band before this record came out. And so I think most of it was done by Corinne Tucker, who is the singer and guitarist, and Carrie Brownstein. And then they worked with St. Vincent, who actually helped produce the record. And so there's a little bit of a different take on Sleater-Kinney's sound kind of going on here. And I really like the direction that they kind of went with this. It has elements of sort of electronic. They're pulling in influences from like electro clash type stuff. Definitely a lot slower and less spastic than something like that. But, there's also the first song musically sounds almost industrial, and which is like nothing like Sleater-Kinney has ever sounded like in the past. Sleater-Kinney was pretty much a straight up rock band previously to this. There was maybe a little bit of experimentation kind of going on some of their records. But for the most part, you pretty much knew kind of what you were going to get with Sleater-Kinney. I mean, obviously each record kind of sounded different, but I feel like with this one, they really kind of approached it with a lot of different ideas. Mm-hmm. Parts of it sound almost like a St. Vincent record. And I think St. Vincent probably had a lot to do with sort of the direction that Carrie and Corinne decided to go in. I actually reviewed this record on the Accelerativ Thrust YouTube channel when it first came out. I don't remember what my review was like on that channel, but I like this album a lot more now than I did then after listening to it a few other times. And that's why I decided to pick it for this. I think that moments kind of almost have like a sort of like a singer-songwriter, like ABBA 70s kind of influence to it as well. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely some moments that even kind of remind me of something like, I don't know, like the radio version of like Heart, you know, like stuff like that. I mean, but like through the filter of like punk rock more than something like that. You know what I mean? There is definitely some guitar work on it for sure. Actually, I mean, there's a lot of guitar. I would still say this is a rock record. I just think that it's maybe presented with more electronic elements than what this band, you know, had previously worked with. And I think the songwriting's really good. I've always liked Corinne's vocals. You know, she's got this very soulful kind of bluesiness to her vocals that always worked well, surprisingly, with even the more punkier side of Sleater-Kinney, which if anybody who like is not familiar with Sleater-Kinney's early work, I would recommend checking it out. I think that they were a really, really, and I mean, they're still together now, but I think like they've always been a pretty consistently badass band. I've always enjoyed like what they've put out. Yeah, I would say if you're a fan of St. Vincent and you're a fan of like sort of stuff like ABBA, and if you're a fan of early Sleater-Kinney, I think all of that kind of in a blender, and there's other influences I hear, but I can't quite pull them out of my head right now. But if you're a fan of, you know, this band at all, and you kind of would like to hear maybe a different take, and maybe you've already listened to it and you don't like it. I know that, like I said, there's seems to be a lot of people that it seems to be a record that a lot of their fans just seem to love or hate. And I think this is just kind of where they were at the time. And this is 2 years ago. This came out in 2019. And so, yeah. What do you think, Erik?
Well, yeah, it's funny because you picked two things that I honestly just have never listened to. So I've never listened to Sleater-Kinney at all, but yeah, I liked it a lot. It wasn't what I expected. I feel like my review here is going to be almost just like my Arctic Monkeys review, because it's really similar in a way, not the music, but my experience listening to it. Yeah. So I didn't know what to expect. It's interesting that you brought up the St. Vincent thing, because as far as the guitars go, I definitely can hear it. There's a lot of fuzz. There's a lot of sort of like glitchy fuzz, if that makes any sense. Like,
yes,
you know, absolutely. It pops in. They're dry, like extremely dry. There's not, for as much stuff that we review on this show that it's drenched in reverb, this is not. This is like super dry and straight and rocking. And, you know, I thought that the songwriting was cool. I didn't know what I was getting into. And so it's always hard when you know that a band is really influential and really well respected, and they have a body of work that, you know, probably changes and does different things. It's kind of hard to know what you're hearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like this might have been a huge departure from their other stuff, but I wouldn't know. So I can't really hold that against it or anything like that. The elements I liked of it though were, I liked the vocals, and I'm not sure who exactly does the lead vocals and does backup, or if they share. Like I looked at some live stuff and I saw both of them doing the lead vocals. So I have no idea, but either way, I like both of their voices a lot. The songs are like groovy, and I mean, not groovy like if you're going to San Francisco, wear a flower in your hair kind of groovy, but it, like really drum heavy, and they're in a groove, but they're also super angular. And I think that, again, that might be the St. Vincent thing, or that might be their sound. But I really enjoyed it. This is going to sound ridiculous, but to me, it sort of sounded like a mellow Atari Teenage Riot, if that makes any sense.
That is actually a great description.
If you took out all of the noise and you took out all of the screaming and all of the anger, and you had just good songs, that's kind of what you end up with, because it has so much energy. It almost verges on feeling revolutionary in a way, vocally, I thought that Patti Smith is a huge influence on this. She has to be. And a lot of like Sonic Youth elements, not necessarily as far as the songwriting, but how things are put together. I think that there were lots of hidden cool sounds in the production, a lot of cool little vocal parts, like background vocal parts. And yeah, I just thought it sounded really fun, and it sounded cool. And I feel like I'm at a loss for not hearing the rest of their stuff. So I think I'm going to leave my review, which is not much of a review at all, at that. And then, maybe go back and hear some other stuff so I actually know what I'm hearing, because it's just hard to dive into one record and say, oh, this is how I feel about this, without knowing the other things they've done,
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, I did really enjoy it. It's super good. I love the songs. I love the guitar work. And yeah, so I know that sort of sounds like a cop-out review of that, but it's I think I would really rather familiarize myself with the group a little more before. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you said you liked it, and that's, I mean, that's really all you need to,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, but the thing is though, I totally get what you're saying. And like I said, this isn't my favorite Sleater-Kinney album.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of picked the worst album to start people off with Sleater-Kinney. Not in a bad, that doesn't mean like Sleater-Kinney, like that this is a bad record.
Right.
What I mean is yeah, it is a departure from their earlier stuff. I would strongly recommend you check out their earlier stuff. And I hope that doesn't like, frustrate you there, Eric.
But no.
I thought that this
at all. It was just I only could hear a few things in there, and I know that that's not really accurate.
Yeah. And I thought that, I just think that this is, even though it's not my favorite record by them, I think it's their most interesting.
Oh,
because of what they became on, or what they're kind of the direction they're going now as a band. A lot of people are really upset that Janet Weiss is no longer part of this band. And when you hear those earlier records, particularly Dig Me Out, The Woods, and my personal favorite is The Hot Rock. And even the stuff before that, Call the Doctor, which I actually don't think Janet Weiss was the drummer on, but that stuff, you'll understand why some people have strong feelings about Janet. She was an amazing drummer.
Cool.
And it still is. I mean, I think I'm not sure if she still does the Project Quasi, which I think was with her husband. And I'm not sure if they're still together or whatever, but definitely familiarize yourself with early Sleater-Kinney for sure.
I will.
But
yeah,
this record
kind of lame coming into it saying, oh, it's kind of like St. Vincent. It's kind of like Patti Smith.
Sure.
Kind of like La Tigre.
Sure.
It's like if anyone else gave that review, I'd be like, well, that is not very helpful.
Well, to be honest with you, I just said that it kind of, parts of it reminded me of Heart. and ABBA. And now I have to kind of rethink it. I'm like, did it really? But I don't know. For some reason, there's a couple of songs that gave me that feeling. And I don't know why. And it probably doesn't sound anything like them. But the slower Atari Teenage Riot, that is actually, I think, very accurate.
Well, it was just more the energy of it, It's like a lot of energy. So that's
totally. But that first song though, it almost sounded almost industrial to me.
Yeah, it did. This all had a more electronic sound to it than I expected. So.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Speaking of sounds, but super like heavy sounds, like unbelievably heavy sounds. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this band called Closet Witch. I feel like they're a band that, like, I don't know if there's anybody out there that has heard of this obscure band from Iowa that listens to this, please let us know. I've never heard of them. Erik, have you heard of them?
Closet Witch, right?
Yeah, Closet Witch. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have heard of them.
Okay. All right. Help us out. We know nothing about these people. I just, we need to know. Psych.
Shit, you got him.
I got him, dude. Did you see the look on their faces?
Oh man. All right.
Anyway, Closet Witch is this band from Iowa, and two of their members live in Muscatine, and one of their members lives in Burlington and one in Keokuk. Wow. So there's some travelers.
Yeah.
And they are part of my musical DNA because I've played in bands with them. That sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But anyway, I played in bands with two of their members.
And shared DNA. Is that what you were saying?
Our shared DNA.
I mean, I've shared DNA with every person I've been in a band with, but
they are so going to unfriend me after they're so going to unfriend me after this review. All right. But anyway, good people, Alex, Royce, Corey, and Molly. They just released a new 2-song EP called Mellification, which I think must be kind of a teaser for their upcoming second full length. I don't know when that's going to be coming out, but yeah, these are the two heaviest songs from them so far, I would say. I mean, it's no mistake that this is Closet Witch. This is like them at just their freaking heaviest, man. The guitar tones are just unbelievable, but I don't think that Closet Witch is just doing the same thing over and over again with these two songs either. I think they're breaking some new ground in their sound a little bit. I hear, especially on the second track,
Dogs Running.
Okay. I hear, like, particularly in the last like half or so, some really strong, like almost shoegazy / emo elements creeping in. Like Alex is using some, I want to say it's delay. I mean, who knows what that guy is using for effects. He's a very pretty knowledgeable gearhead from just spending some time talking to him about that stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is just like heavy, intense stuff. And it's like everything this band does. It just forms this amazing, intense ball of like just in your face noise that just smacks you upside the head. And it's really fast in some parts, but also like, I mean, doomy in some parts. It's just really, some of the most intense stuff that I've heard in a long time from anybody. Molly's vocals are just as heavy and just in your face as ever. The guitar just screams at you. The drums, Corey's bass, you can always hear that is just rumbling through the whole thing. Like, I can't really say much more. This is just a badass Closet Witch release that makes me excited for the new full length. and I'm glad to be friends with these guys. If you like atmospheric black metal, grindcore, really heavy, like almost power violence type stuff, Converge, Circle Takes the Square, any of that stuff, and also even some doom metal, this is the band for you, man. And the way that it's recorded, the way that it's produced, it's heavy as hell, man. What did you think, Erik?
Yeah, you said heavy as hell. My first note is heavy as shit. So yeah, I like it a lot. I like Closet Witch, and I like them as people. I actually saw them over the weekend here in Iowa City. I saw Molly and Corey and Alex.
Yeah.
And talked to them for a second. But I did get verification that these are tracks that were made at the same time as the upcoming full length.
Yep.
They just didn't fit or something like that. But yeah, so it's exciting because I feel like we're getting a taste of what we're going to get with the full length, which is awesome. I've never heard Closet Witch sound heavier than this. Like,
me neither.
Like at all. Like the playing is super tight. It feels intricate. I don't know how to play grindcore. I don't know how to play music this intense and fast. And so I'm sure that the technical proficiency involved is insane.
Yes.
But sometimes when that happens, I don't like it, or I don't even know what it takes to play it. With this, it sounds very intricate. It sounds hard to write and hard to play and hard to arrange. And it's awesome. It's super fast and heavy and brutal. But like you said, I think they're sort of going into some newer realms that I haven't really heard as much. It's getting spacier. They're allowing the songs to sort of unfold within themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that the songs go a lot more places than previous stuff I've heard. And with the effects, I do think it gets almost into, some, it's hard to say shoegaze when I'm talking about this release, but it does get into a little more spacey places than I've heard them go into before. And yeah, like I said, I just feel that like the songs are, they're letting them breathe a little bit. With this, you do get sort of some moments of reflection and dynamics. And I think that that's really cool, because then when things hit, they're even more intense, when they come back. And so, and I think Molly's vocals sound just completely sick. I don't think I've heard her vocals sound like this before now. And again, some things I listen to in preparation for the show in the car, sometimes in headphones. It just kind of depends. This one I listen to extremely loud in the car, and there is so much low end on these vocals. I can't believe it. Like, it's almost guttural at times. And it's just so brutal and amazing vocals. But yeah, it makes me really stoked for the upcoming full length. And I think it's going to be awesome. I super bad want to make it to their show in September, September 9th. I think we mentioned that on the last show, but I'll mention it again because it's going to be with Justice Fetish from Des Moines and Negative Approach. Everyone should go to that show. I think it's going to be sick. That's going to be in Des Moines. And Closet Witch is awesome. I think the music's only becoming better and heavier and more interesting. And I'm super stoked to hear the new full length. So
wouldn't it be funny if now this is not going to happen in reality because this is in my mind. And but wouldn't it be funny if like they're preparing us for a ska album?
Oh man, I'd be
like we didn't mention that the 2 tracks on this record are the last time you're going to be hearing anything this heavy from us.
The new name is Closet Witch.
Scozit Witch.
Really
that sounds like a fucking brand of like a microwavable grilled cheese.
Scozit Witch.
Scozit Witch.
Oh man, I have never heard grind ska, and I am really excited to hear it now.
Well, the closest I've heard is this band called Leftover Crack.
Oh yeah, sure.
And well, then there's also Choking Victim. They kind of, but they weren't really grind. They were just metal at times.
No, I think Closet Witch should just add a trombone, and that would be fine. That's all we need.
Just a trombone. That's it.
Yeah.
And then like there could be like these ska breakdowns that are like kind of like it'd be like No Doubt meets Converge.
Well, if they don't do it, I am going to. So
Scozit.
Assuming they're not going to do it, get a hold of me if you want to be in a grind ska band.
Well, what it could be is
doesn't grind ska already sound like a type of like a genre?
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah. See.
Well, it could be a ska tribute to Closet Witch. We could just do like Closet Witch songs, with horns, and the horn can mimic Molly's vocals.
We got a plan. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to hearing her ska vocals on the next record though. I really want to hear what she does in her, I don't know there was No Doubt. What other like ska band? Maybe she'll like kind of do like a Tim Armstrong impression or something like, Time Bomb type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm getting off of this conversation now. If they want to unfriend me, go right ahead. Closet Witch, I love you guys. It won't be
the first time we've lost friends over ska.
That's true. Oh yeah, ska is like the uncoolest thing in 2021.
The friend killer.
It is a friend killer. Awesome. Hey, Alex, Corey, Roy Smalley, tell us what you think of the term Scozit Witch, because I think that's unbelievable. Be interested in hearing the takes.
I'm super excited to hear it.
Closet Witch. Fucking buy
it. Yeah. All right.
So that concludes the reviews.
Yeah. Don't forget, ska is the friend killer.
Ska is the friend killer.
Ska is the little death that brings total obliteration.
There may be 3 titles to this episode. I mean, this was a good one, Erik. I don't even know where to begin. So we're just
you're saying that during the episode.
Oh, well,
we fucking nailed it, guys. I hope you're enjoying the show, because I mean, this is as good as it's gonna get.
This is seriously, guys. This is like, I feel like we've actually hit like a high mark with this one.
Yeah, this
like,
might be the last episode.
Yeah.
Go out on top, man.
Quit while we're ahead. Like,
oh my God.
You just never know, guys. So yeah.
Anyway,
you guys should give us like some feedback. Like, is this just something that like, just no, guys, no, or is it? Yeah. And just
is it no, guys, no, or yeah? Those are your options.
No, guys, no.
But I like the feedback idea, and yes. I think that if you want us to review something you like, then tell us. If you have a band you want us to review, then tell us. If your friends have a band that you want us to review, just tell us. We'll be stoked to do it.
And also, if you guys ever want to review us, feel free.
Yeah, you could do that. If you send us a review of us, we'll read it on the podcast.
Yes.
We'll read it out loud. You tell us what you think of us.
Yes.
We'll read it.
Weekly. You know what? Let's shoot for that. Weekly reviews of Dan and Erik.
Yeah.
Let's do that, guys. Yeah. Tell us what you think. And we'll read it out on air. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, and I think that's going to go really well. So
check us on the social medias. And
Instagram,
that's where
Facebook.
Instagram, Facebook. That's where you can review us.
Yeah. Send us a message.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Well, guys.
Awesome.
It's been another week.
It's been another week.
Yes. Thank you for listening. And Don't forget to score those Limp Bizkit tickets because you never know when they're going to be rescheduled.
Yep. Yeah. Because they sold out within minutes. So
within minutes, yes.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Oh my. I don't know how to play grindcore.